My name is Kang Chu. I'm with the Friends of the Rogers Park Library, and we're here for Speak Out for the Chicago Public Library. And we got someone here to speak out, and your name is?
Patricia Polden. I've lived in Rogers Park since 2005. I have 3 children who attend the Chicago Public Schools.
And what's your beef about the Chicago Public Library?
I actually have several. And I have been complaining about the Chicago Public Library since I moved here in 2004 from St. Louis. I lived most of my life in St. Louis, Missouri. I've lived in Chicago off and on for 20 years, but raised my children from, like my oldest, from birth to age 6 in St. Louis. And so when my 2 youngest children were very young, we would go to the St. Louis Public Libraries several times a week. And I've been comparing them to the Chicago Public Libraries because I've been shocked since I moved back here at how the Chicago Public Libraries just don't measure up to St. Louis's libraries. It saddens me because Chicago is such a large city with a rich history and a diverse fabric of citizens, and there's a lot of wealth here, and I think that the library system should be a lot better than it is. And when I compare it to St. Louis's libraries, I just don't understand why St. Louis has such a good library system compared to Chicago. Not to take anything away from St. Louis's library system, I'm happy for them that they have such a great library system. It's wonderful for the city of St. Louis, but I know from growing up there that it's not as wealthy of a city. So I would like to encourage the Chicago Public Library to maybe look to St. Louis as a model for what can be done. They have, from my experience of going regularly to the St. Louis Public Libraries from 1998 to 2004, and I mostly was in the South City of St. Louis. Several branches. They're physically beautiful, well-maintained, clean, well-staffed, friendly staff, welcoming to families and children, which I think is very important, and it is markedly different from the Chicago Public Libraries. I have not felt as welcomed with my young children in the Chicago Public Libraries. They're better stocked with books and media, such as CDs and DVDs. So just in really every way I can think of, the St. Louis libraries are better. They also don't have a strict fine systems either. They're more relaxed on the fines, and if you're late you can still check something out, and it's just much more welcoming and easier to use. Of course, regular hours, and that has been my biggest complaint of late, recently, with the Chicago Public Libraries, is all the changing hours and cutbacks. It's just sad. I don't know when the library's open. I have to check on the website to see when my branch hours are every time I want to go, because I'm never sure now, when is it closed, when's it open. They've cut back so many hours, and I'm sure that it's going to affect the use of the library overall, because it's affected my use. I come here less because I can't come here as often because it's not as open as often, and I don't know when it's open.
Any other comments?
Well, I attended the Chicago birthday celebration at the Chicago History Museum with my daughter recently. There was a ceremony with Mayor Emanuel and the Chicago Children's Choir, and some public school children reading essays that they had written about Chicago, and there were some protesters there who had a big sign complaining about the closing of the mental health clinics, which is another thing that upsets me. But I was standing next to a young woman with Down syndrome who was just there in attendance, but she voiced her support of both the closing of the mental health clinics, and she spoke up about the libraries, and save our libraries, I think she said. And I had to chime in and you know, say something too. But she then turned to me and said that she had been laid off as a person who shelves the books, and I know there's been a lot of cutbacks. So, you know, that was very upsetting too, because I think that there are limited employment opportunities, I think, for people with disabilities such as Down syndrome, and it's just, you know, there's just so many things about this that is disturbing to me about these cutbacks. You know, I think it's related also to our move towards digital, you know, e-books, and somehow it seems to me to be related to the overall move towards privatization in the city government. The city government seems to be more interested in paying attention to corporations and private organizations than our public resources, which are so valuable, and we can't lose these things.
So you wouldn't be in favor of having libraries being replaced by bookstores?
Not at all, and I would be very upset to see, for example, if some TIF money went to bail out Barnes & Noble if it was going under, rather than going to bail out the libraries or support the libraries. But what I would really like to also say is I'd like to implore some of our wealthy philanthropic families in Chicago to step up and form an organization for an endowment for the Chicago Public Library, because we do have so many really wonderful, generous, wealthy, philanthropic families here who have done so much for the city, and I don't think that is the only answer. And you know, I believe in you know, public organizations like public schools, public education, which I think the libraries are part of public education. You know, I think they're an important part of public education. It's not, the schools can't do everything, and children need to be able to go somewhere after school and do their homework and do research. Not everyone owns a computer, and even if they do, we need books. So, but if there could be a Friends of the Chicago Public Library, an endowment fund, I think that could be very helpful, and I know that there has to be some wealthy families in Chicago who could help with that.
Any other questions you want to ask or try to answer? Or you just have your say right now, right? That's okay.
I just want to say that as a mother of 3 children who attend Chicago Public Schools, and someone who grew up using libraries my entire life, and I still use the libraries, it's an important issue for me. I would like to have full-time hours, you know, Monday through Saturday, 8 hours at least a day. It should be there for our use. It's an important. There has to be public spaces for people to go. You know, especially families. You know, where are we going to go? Where are we going to take our children? Do we have to pay $20 to get into a museum every time we want to take our children someplace? There has to be a place for us to go with our children. And the libraries are an important resource on many levels. We have to save our libraries.